The family embarrassment. He called me the family disgrace in front of everyone, but when the best man stood up, my past became my power. At her brother's wedding in the US, Emma is publicly shamed as the family embarrassment. Years of being ridiculed for her choices come crashing down until the best man, a stranger with ties to Emma's hidden past, steps in. Secrets unravel, loyalties shift, and Emma discovers that the truth she once buried could change the meaning of family forever. The invitation. The envelope sat on the kitchen counter like a dare. Emma Parker had seen it when she came home from her late shift at the diner, propped against the chipped ceramic sugar jar her landlord had left behind years ago. The ivory paper gleamed faintly beneath the weak overhead light, her name written in the neat, heavy-handed script she recognized instantly. Her brother's handwriting. Emma didn't need to open it to know what it was. The swirling gold calligraphy on the edge gave it away. An invitation. A wedding. His wedding. Her hand hovered above it, hesitant. She hadn't spoken to Ethan in over 2 years, not since their last explosive argument at Christmas. He had stood in their parents' living room, his voice sharp and cruel, listing every failure of hers like a tally sheet. The college she didn't finish, the job that barely paid rent, the pathetic little apartment she lived in. He had laughed when she cried, and her parents hadn't defended her. Family embarrassment. That's what he'd called her then. Emma's chest tightened as she finally picked up the envelope, sliding a finger beneath the flap. The creamy paper was thick, embossed with a golden crest. Mr. and Mrs. Robert Hayes request the honor of your presence. She froze. Hayes, that was the bride's family. Ethan had moved into that world now, the world of polished estates and silver champagne, flutes, a world Emma had only glimpsed in magazines left behind on train seats. Her own reflection in the kitchen window looked back at her, tired eyes, hair pulled into a fraying ponytail, diner uniform still wrinkled from the 12-hour shift. Her brother's wedding would be nothing like this life. She imagined the stares, the whispered judgments, the comparisons between Ethan, the rising corporate star, Rond, Emma's sister who had dropped off the family's radar. She almost tossed the invitation into the trash, almost, but something stopped her. Maybe it was stubbornness, maybe it was the tiny spark inside that whispered, "You don't have to hide." Emma pressed the card to her chest, her heart heavy with dread and curiosity. Attending meant facing Ethan, her parents, the sneering relatives who had always chosen his side, but not attending meant letting him win. Confirming that she was too broken to show her face, her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from her best friend, Lila. "You going to the wedding? Don't let that jerk think he scared you off. Show up. Hold your head high." Emma stared at the message until her eyes blurred. She wanted to believe she could do it, that she could walk into that glittering world and not shrink beneath its weight. But she wasn't sure if she was strong enough. Still, when she went to bed that night, the invitation rested on her nightstand instead of the trash. And when morning came, Emma made a decision. She would go. She would stand in the same room as her brother, the man who had labeled her a disgrace, and prove, if only to herself, that she wasn't the family embarrassment anymore. The journey back. The bus rumbled beneath Emma as it pulled away from her small town, carrying her farther from the life she had stitched together in bits and pieces. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, watching rows of weathered houses give way to stretches of highway. The wedding was in Connecticut, at the Hayes family estate. Emma had Googled it after receiving the invitation, half out of curiosity and half out of self-torture. The pictures had shown sprawling lawns, fountains, and a mansion that looked like it belonged in a movie. Her own life was far from a movie. She had packed lightly, one second-hand suitcase with a simple dress, borrowed heels from Leela, and the cheap perfume she'd saved for rare occasions. The dress wasn't glamorous, but it was all she could afford. She told herself she didn't need to compete. She wasn't there for anyone's approval, at least. That's what she tried to believe. As the miles rolled by, Emma thought of Ethan. Her brother had always been the golden child, tall, confident, with the kind of charm that made people forgive his arrogance. Their parents had adored him, pouring every ounce of pride into his achievements. Debate team captain, business school graduate, corporate job with a 6-figure salary. And Emma, she was the quiet one, the dreamer who sketched dresses in the margins of her notebooks and worked late shifts to pay for art classes she couldn't finish. Life had gotten messy, as life often did, and somewhere along the way, her family had stopped seeing her as potential and started seeing her as failure. The memory of their last argument returned unbidden. Ethan standing tall, his expensive watch glinting under the Christmas lights. "You're the reason Mom and Dad are ashamed," he'd said coldly. "You're the family embarrassment, Emma. You've done nothing with your life." The words had sliced deep. She'd left that night and hadn't gone back. Until now, her phone buzzed again. Another message from Leela. "Remember, walk in there like you belong. Don't let them break you." Emma smiled faintly. She was grateful for Leela's fire, even if she didn't always feel it in herself. The bus pulled into the city terminal hours later, and Emma stepped out into a different world. Sleek cars lined the curb, and well-dressed travelers wheeled glossy luggage behind them. Emma clutched her worn suitcase tighter, acutely aware of every threadbare edge. A taxi driver waved her over, and soon she was speeding toward the Hayes estate. Her heart pounded harder the closer they drew. When the gates came into view, Emma's breath caught. Black iron arches curved high above, flanked by stone pillars. Beyond them stretched a driveway so long it seemed endless, lined with trees trimmed into perfect symmetry. The car rolled forward, gravel crunching beneath the tires, until the mansion rose into view. White stone, columns, a grand staircase leading up to double doors taller than any house Emma had ever seen. Guests were already arriving, stepping out of luxury cars in glittering gowns and crisp tuxedos. Emma's pulse quickened. She felt like a child crashing in an adult world, out of place in every possible way. The taxi driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "You here for the wedding?" Emma nodded, forcing a smile. He whistled softly. "Fancy crowd. You'll be fine, though. Just hold your head up." She paid him, her hands trembling slightly, and stepped out. The cool air brushed her skin, carrying faint notes of roses and polished stone. For a moment, she stood frozen at the foot of the grand staircase, staring at the mansion that would soon hold the most difficult reunion of her life. Then she squared her shoulders, tightened her grip on her suitcase, and climbed the steps. Whatever waited inside judgment, whispers, or the brother who had once broken her, Emma was determined not to turn back. Old wounds in new clothes. Emma checked into a modest inn a few miles from the Hayes estate. It was nothing fancy: floral wallpaper, squeaky bed frame, the faint scent of bleach clinging to the linens, but it was hers, and she felt safer there than under the watchful eyes of her brother's world. The next evening was the rehearsal dinner, a glittering affair at the estate's ballroom. Emma stood before the mirror, smoothing her borrowed dress. The navy fabric hugged her frame simply but decently. She applied a little mascara, dabbed on her cheap perfume, and told herself she looked fine. Not extraordinary, just fine. When she arrived, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses filled the room. Crystal chandeliers spilled golden light over tables covered in white linens. Guests sparkled in sequins and silk. Emma's shoes pinched as she walked inside, each step reminding her how out of place she was. She spotted Ethan across the room, tall and handsome in his tailored suit. His fiancée, Caroline Hayes, glowed beside him like she'd stepped out of a bridal magazine. Their parents stood close, faces lit with pride. Emma approached cautiously. "Emma," her mother said, her smile tight. "You made it." Her father barely nodded, already turning back to another guest. Ethan smirked, lifting his champagne glass. "Well, look who decided to show up. I half expected you to bail." Emma swallowed her hurt. "I wouldn't miss your wedding." Ethan's eyes glinted with something sharp. "Let's hope you don't make it memorable for the wrong reasons." Caroline touched his arm, laughing softly. "Ethan, be nice." But the sting lingered. Emma felt the weight of stares, the subtle once-over glances from strangers who seemed to measure her worth in her clothes, her posture, her very presence. She forced herself to mingle, nibbling at appetizers, answering polite questions about her career with vague words. No one cared much about her answers. She was Ethan's sister, the one they whispered about when her back was turned out by the end of the night. Emma escaped to the quiet garden outside, her heart heavy. The stars above seemed distant, unreachable. She promised herself she wouldn't cry, not here, not now. Tomorrow would be harder. Tomorrow was the wedding. The wedding day arrives. Morning sunlight poured into the inn's window as Emma woke with a knot in her stomach. It was the day. She dressed carefully, slipping into a pale lavender dress she'd saved for years, the one she thought she might wear to her own wedding someday. Simple, delicate, nothing like the gowns the other women would wear, but it was hers. At the estate, the scene unfolded like a dream. White roses lined the pathway to the grand hall. A string quartet played softly as guests took their seats. The bride's family buzzed with excitement. photographers capturing every gleaming detail. Emma took a seat near the middle rows, alone. She smoothed her skirt, her palms damp. Around her, people whispered, laughed, leaned close to gossip. She imagined their words. That's his sister. She doesn't look like much. Poor thing. The ceremony was breathtaking. Carolyn walked down the aisle radiant, Ethan beaming with practiced charm. Vows were exchanged, rings slipped onto fingers, applause filling the air. Emma clapped politely, her throat tight. She wanted to feel joy for her brother, but beneath it all, she felt invisible, a shadow in the corner of his perfect day. Then came the reception, tables draped in gold, champagne flowing, a live band playing jazz. Guests danced and toasted under strings of lights. Emma lingered near the edge, sipping water, trying to blend into the background. But the speeches were coming, and with them, the moment that would change everything. The toast that burned. Ethan stood, microphone in hand, the crowd's chatter quieting as he raised his glass. His grin was wide, his voice smooth. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his words practiced and confident. He spoke of love, of Caroline's beauty, of the joy of family. The guests clapped warmly, then his gaze swept the room and landed on Emma. "And of course," he said with a chuckle, "a special thanks to my sister Emma for coming. I wasn't sure she'd make it. You know, Emma's always been the unpredictable one in the family." A ripple of laughter. Emma's stomach tightened. Ethan continued, his tone dripping with false charm. "Growing up, I was the one with the big plans, and Emma, well, she was more of a free spirit. Some might say the family embarrassment." The room erupted in awkward chuckles. Some laughed openly, others shifted uncomfortably. Emma's face burned. Her chest tightened as humiliation spread like wildfire. The words cut sharper because they weren't new, they were the echo of every cruel remark he'd ever thrown at her. Ethan smirked, clearly enjoying the spotlight. "But hey, we love her anyway, right?" The laughter that followed felt like knives. Emma gripped her glass, her knuckles white, fighting the urge to run. Her brother had done it, again reduced her to a punchline in front of everyone. Shattered in silence, the laughter faded into music, but Emma remained frozen in her seat. Her cheeks burned, her eyes stung, but she refused to let the tears fall here. Not in front of them. She rose quietly, slipping toward the edge of the room. Guests parted as she passed, some avoiding her eyes, others watching with thinly veiled pity. The band's lively tune mocked her racing heartbeat. In the hallway beyond the ballroom, she leaned against the wall, pressing her palm to her chest. She could barely breathe. How could he do this? On his wedding day, with everyone watching. She had come in peace, with nothing but hope to keep things civil. And still, he had humiliated her. Her phone buzzed. A message from Leela. "How's it going? You okay?" Emma didn't reply. Her throat was too tight, her hands shaking. She considered leaving. She imagined slipping out into the night, catching the first train home, disappearing before anyone noticed. It would be easy and safe, but something inside her refused. A flicker of defiance, faint but alive. Why should she leave? Why should she'll be the one to run again, while Ethan basked in applause? No, she wouldn't. She wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders, and took a deep breath. She would go back in there. She would stand tall, even if her heart was breaking. What Emma didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that someone else had been watching, and he was about to change everything. The best man Stanzima returned to the ballroom, her heart heavy but her steps steady. She slipped back into her chair, her gaze fixed on the tablecloth, determined to endure the rest of the night in silence. That's when Daniel Hayes, the best man, rose to give his speech. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair neatly combed back, Daniel exuded quiet confidence. He was Caroline's older brother, and his presence commanded attention. The crowd hushed as he lifted the microphone. He began warmly, praising his sister, joking lightly about Ethan's persistence in winning her heart. Laughter rippled through the guests, genuine this time, not cruel. Then Daniel's tone shifted, his voice deepening. "Marriage isn't just about love, it's about respect, about standing by one another, especially when the world doubts you, and it's about recognizing the people who shaped us, who stood by us when no one else would." His eyes swept the room, then settled on Emma. Emma's chest tightened. Why was he looking at her? Daniel continued, "Some of you may not know this, but years ago, I went through one of the darkest chapters of my life. I nearly lost myself, but someone stepped in, someone who believed in me when no one else did. That someone was Emma Parker. The ballroom fell silent. All heads turned toward her. Emma froze. Her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear. Daniel smiled gently. I met Emma by chance in New York. I was struggling, broken, really, and while she had nothing, she gave me everything she could: time, encouragement, kindness. She pulled me out of a hole I thought I'd never escape. And she never once asked for recognition. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Whispers rose like rustling leaves. Ethan's smirk vanished. Emma's lips parted, but no words came. Her secret, something she had buried, never telling even her closest friends, was suddenly laid bare. And for the first time all night, the spotlight wasn't mocking, it was honoring. Secrets in the spotlight. Kima's pulse thundered as Daniel lowered the microphone. He wasn't finished. I know this may surprise many of you, he said, his gaze steady. Because Emma isn't the type to brag about her sacrifices. She doesn't carry herself with pride or arrogance. But make no mistake, she is one of the strongest people I know. The guests murmured, shock rippling across the room. Emma's parents looked stunned, her father's brow furrowed, her mother blinking rapidly as if she'd misheard. Daniel went on, his words deliberate. People talk about success as if it's measured only in money or titles. But success is also the lives you touch, the people you save. And in that sense, Emma Parker is wealthier than most of us here. Emma's throat tightened, her vision blurred with unshed tears. Ethan, seated beside his bride, shifted uncomfortably. His jaw clenched, his hands tightening on the tablecloth. Daniel, this isn't the time. Oh, I think it's exactly the time, Daniel cut in smoothly, his voice carrying over the crowd, especially after the way you just spoke about your sister. Gasps rippled again. Guests exchanged uneasy glances. Emma wanted to disappear, and yet something inside her stirred. A warmth, a fragile flame. For the first time in years, someone was standing up for her. Not just anyone, the best man, in front of everyone who had dismissed her. Daniel lifted his glass. So, here's my toast to Emma Parker. For proving that strength isn't about status, but about heart. A handful of guests applauded tentatively. Others remained silent, torn between loyalty and truth. But the tide had shifted. The whispers weren't mocking now, they were curious, even admiring. And Ethan's perfect wedding had a crack running through it. The family splits. The reception buzzed with tension after Daniel's speech. Conversations grew hushed, glances darting between Emma and Ethan. The air was thick with unspoken conflict. Emma sat frozen, her hands trembling in her lap. She didn't know whether to thank Daniel or run from the room. Her parents leaned toward Ethan, whispering urgently. Her mother's face was pale, her father's jaw tight. Ethan's expression darkened, pride wounded, anger simmering beneath his polished exterior. Excuse me, he muttered, pushing back his chair. He stalked toward Emma, his voice low but sharp enough to cut. What did you tell him? Trying to make me look bad at my own wedding. Emma flinched. I didn't say anything. I didn't even know he'd. Don't lie to me. Ethan's eyes blazed. You've always been jealous. Always trying to drag me.
Название «Мой отец» отказался вести меня к алтарю, потому что сестре было некомфортно. Я заставила его пожалеть об этом. Когда мой отец выбрал комфорт моей сестры вместо моего счастья, я поклялась устроить ему свадьбу, которую он никогда не забудет. Ту, что будет преследовать его сожалением. Предательство больнее всего, когда оно исходит от семьи. В день, который должен был стать самым счастливым в ее жизни, отец Эмили отказался вести ее к алтарю, заявив, что ее сестре это неприятно. Униженная, разбитая и охваченная яростью, Эмили решила превратить боль в силу. Совершенная мечта о свадьбе Эмили Картер всегда представляла себе день свадьбы тем самым моментом, когда жизнь, наконец, станет справедливой. С детства ей приходилось мириться с тем, что ее младшая сестра Клэр всегда была золотым ребенком, той, кто никогда не ошибается. Эмили же была ответственной, послушной дочерью, помогала матери с хозяйством, училась на стипендиях, пока сестра проводила время на вечеринках. Но сколько бы Эмили ни старалась, отец всегда смотрел на Клэр с гордостью, а на нее — с тихим равнодушием. Теперь же, в 27, Эмили верила, что все изменилось. Она стояла перед зеркалом в роскошной свадебной комнате на Манхэттене. Кремовое платье нежно облегало ее, фигуру кружева не спадала легкими волнами. Впервые она видела себя не забытой дочерью, а невестой, женщиной, которая построила собственную жизнь, выбрала свою любовь и, наконец-то, обретала счастье, которое никто не сможет отнять. Даниэль, ее жених, стал ее опорой во всех бурях. Он не был ярким или самоуверенным, как мужчины, которых приводила домой Клэр, но он был добрым, надежным, инженером-программистом, который по-прежнему приносил ей цветы по вторникам просто так, который помнил мелочи. Для Эмили он был доказательством того, что настоящая любовь не обязана быть громкой, чтобы быть крепкой. В комнату вбежала подруга и свидетельница Ханна, держа 2 стаканчика кофе. «Латте для невесты», — радостно сказала она, протягивая чашку. «Боже, Эм, ты выглядишь так, будто вышла из сказки». Эмили улыбнулась, убирая темный локон за ухо. «Все нереально. Все время кажется, что я проснусь, и будет просто еще одно воскресенье». «Нет уж», — твердо ответила Ханна, усевшись рядом. «Это твой момент. Наконец-то». Эмили кивнула, но внутри ее сердце сжалось. Она неделями продумывала каждую деталь свадьбы, от нежно-розовых цветов до живого джаз-бенда, на котором настоял Даниэль, зная, как сильно она любит Эллу Фицджеральд. Все было идеально, кроме одного. Она все еще надеялась, что ее отец поведет ее к алтарю. Несмотря на все трудности в их отношениях, Эмили всегда мечтала именно об этом моменте, когда отец положит ее руку в руку Даниэля, признавая ее выбор. Хоть раз в жизни она хотела почувствовать себя для него такой же дочерью, как Клэр, любимой, значимой, выбранной. Вечером, на репетиционном ужине, она решилась наконец спросить его. Ресторан гудел разговорами, родственники смеялись и делились историями. Родители Даниэля были теплыми и гостеприимными, и Эмили чувствовала себя уже частью их семьи. А Клэр, как всегда, явилась последней, в сверкающем серебряном платье, больше подходящим для бала, чем для свадьбы сестры. Все взгляды обратились на нее, ее смех звучал громче других. Отец Эмили сразу оживился при ее появлении, глаза его засветились гордостью. Эмили крепче сжала салфетку на коленях. «Не сегодня. Это мой день. Она его не заберет». После ужина Эмили заметила отца у бара с бокалом бурбона. Он постарел, волосы тронула седина, осанка стала тяжелее. Но он все так же излучал силу, которую невозможно было не заметить. «Папа», — осторожно начала Эмили. «Можно спросить?» — он повернулся, приподнял бровь. «Что такое, Эмили?» — она глубоко вдохнула. «Я хочу, чтобы ты завтра вел меня к алтарю. Для меня это очень важно». Повисла пауза. Эмили смотрела ему в глаза, надеясь увидеть тепло, согласие, но его губы сжались в тонкую линию. Он медленно покачал головой. «Думаю, это не лучшая идея». Эмили замерла. «Что? Почему?» Он тяжело вздохнул, поставив бокал. «Твоя сестра. Ей некомфортно. Она считает, что это ее заденет». Слова ударили, как ледяная вода. «Клэр? При чем здесь она? Это же моя свадьба. Она все равно твоя сестра», — ответил он твердо, почти отстраненно. «Я не хочу напряжения между вами. Так будет лучше». У Эмили закружилась голова. Хотелось закричать, спросить, как чувства Клэр могут быть важнее ее собственных. Но ком в горле не дал ей вымолвить ни слова. Отец снова поднял бокал, будто разговор был окончен. «Ты справишься, Эмили? Ты всегда была сильной. Тебе я не нужен». Эта последняя фраза резанула больнее ножа. «Тебе я не нужен». Мимо прошла Клэр. Увидев выражение лица сестры, она едва заметно усмехнулась и, покачивая бедрами, ушла прочь. Мир Эмили рухнул. Ее совершенная свадебная мечта треснула, даже не начавшись. Отказ, который разбил меня вечер репетиционного ужина, должен был быть наполнен радостью. Гости смеялись за столами, бокалы шампанского звенели, а кузины Даниэля дразнили его шутливыми историями из детства. Но Эмили сидела молча, снова и снова прокручивая в голове слова отца. «Твоей сестре будет некомфортно. Ты не нуждаешься во мне». То, с какой легкостью он ее отверг, оставило ее пустой внутри. Она все еще находилась в том же зале среди улыбающихся лиц, но чувствовала себя словно за стеклом, кричащей беззвучно, и никто не слышал. Даниэль сел рядом, его теплая ладонь коснулась ее руки. «Эй!» — прошептал он, вглядываясь в ее лицо. «Все в порядке? Ты почти не притронулась к еде». Эмили выдавила улыбку, губы дрожали. «Все хорошо, просто. Нервы, наверное». Он не поверил. Даниэль слишком хорошо ее знал. Под столом он мягко сжал ее руку. «Поговорим позже. Ладно?» Она кивнула, благодарная, но в то же время охваченная чувством вины. Ей меньше всего хотелось портить этот уикенд семейными драмами. Через зал Клэр, как обычно, купалась во внимании. Она громко рассказывала очередную преувеличенную историю о поездке в Майами. Отец Эмили смеялся громче всех. Его глаза сияли, словно Клэр сотворила чудо. Эмили тихо вышла наружу на прохладный вечерний воздух. Манхэттен горел неоновыми огнями, такси проносились мимо, и мир продолжал жить, словно ее сердце не было только что разорвано. Она прижала ладони к животу, сдерживая слезы, воспоминания нахлынули. Дни рождения, когда Клэр задувала свечи вместо нее. Школьные выступления, где Клэр забывала ее костюм дома. Отец, который лишь пожимал плечами. Она младше, дай ей момент. Каждый раз Эмили проглатывала обиду, убеждая себя, что однажды он заметит ее тоже. Но вот она взрослая, успешная, независимая. И все еще невидимая. Когда Даниэль нашел ее снаружи, она обнимала себя, пытаясь согреться. — тихо сказал он, накидывая на ее плечи свой пиджак. «Что случилось?» Слезы застилали ей глаза. Она больше не могла держать это в себе. «Он не пойдет со мной к алтарю, Даниэль. Он сказал, что Клэр будет некомфортно. Представляешь? В мой свадебный день он думает о ее чувствах». Челюсть Даниэля напряглась, в его обычно спокойных глазах мелькнула ярость. «Это возмутительно. Это твой день, не ее. Я просто хотела...» Ее голос сорвался. «Хотела один-единственный момент, когда я буду для него важна. Хоть раз». Даниэль прижал ее к себе, его подбородок коснулся ее волос. «Для меня ты важна. Всегда. И мы сделаем так, что этот день будет о нас. Только о нас, Эмили». Беззвучно рыдала у него на груди, черпая силы в его спокойствии. Но даже в его объятиях в ней зарождалось семя ярости. На следующее утро Эмили пыталась держать лицо. В холле отеля она встретила мать, надеясь на поддержку, но ее не нашла. «Мам, ты знала, что папа отказался вести меня к алтарю?» Голос дрожал. Мать отвела глаза. «У твоего отца есть причины. Мы не хотим расстраивать Клэр». Эмили отвисла челюсть. «Расстраивать Клэр? Это же не ее свадьба?» Мать вздохнула, понизив голос. «Эмили, ты всегда была сильной. А Клэр, она хрупкая. Ты знаешь ее. Просто отпусти это. Не устраивай сцену, не устраивай сцену». Это был девиз семьи Картеров, когда дело касалось Клэр. Эмили ушла, пока слезы снова не прорвались. Она чувствовала себя призраком в собственной семье, терпимой, но никогда не любимой. Ночью, лежа без сна в гостиничном номере, Эмили смотрела в потолок. Ханна тихо посапывала на соседней кровати. Слова отца снова и снова вспыхивали в голове, режущие как нож. Ее свадебное платье висело в шкафу, светясь в лунном свете. Но оно не радовало, а напоминало саван. Эмили сжала кулаки. Нет, она не позволит им все испортить, не позволит Клэр снова победить, если отец считает, что она не нуждается в нем, если сестра думает, что может лишить ее момента. Тогда Эмили докажет, насколько они ошибаются. Завтра, решила она, будет не просто свадьба. Это будет возмездие. И когда все закончится, они будут сожалеть, что недооценили ее. Безмолвная ярость невесты утреннее солнце лилось сквозь высокие окна отеля, золотыми полосами ложась на лицо Эмили. Но вместо тепла она чувствовала только холодный отзвук вчерашних слов. Голос отца звучал в ее голове ясно. «Ты не нуждаешься во мне». Она тихо поднялась, чтобы не разбудить Ханну, и ушла в ванную. Вглядываясь в зеркало, Эмили едва узнала свое отражение. Глаза опухли от слез, губы побледнели. Это должно было быть самое счастливое утро ее жизни, а она чувствовала себя опустошенной. Она оперлась ладонями о столешницу и заставила себя дышать. «Ты не можешь сломаться. Не перед ними». В памяти всплыло детство. Как Клэр дразнила ее плакса, как смеялась, когда Эмили не могла сдержать эмоций. Отец лишь чакалт, похлопывая Клэр по плечу, ни разу не встав на защиту старшей дочери. С тех пор Эмили научилась плакать втайне. И теперь ничего не изменилось, но одно было другим. Она больше не маленькая девочка. Она невеста, готовая вступить в новую жизнь. И если ее семья снова решила унизить ее, они об этом пожалеют. Позже, когда вокруг царила суета подготовки, Эмили сидела молча, пока стилист завивал ее волосы. Ханна просматривала телефон, ворча о расписании, а Маргарет, мать Даниэля, принесла пирожные и добрые слова. «Ты выглядишь чудесно, дорогая», — сказала Маргарет,